the victim archetype and money. How the victim archetype can show up in our business, our spiritual business, and our spiritual path, our spiritual journey, and some of the things that we can do to resolve or to heal the victim archetype within us. My name is Eileen Burns. I'm a coach, healer, and therapist, and an archetypal therapist and coach. And I love helping empaths, healers, and light workers live more of their purpose with strength, courage, and ease. And one of the biggest things that I see, and I've seen it myself, I see it in many, many light workers, empaths, intuitives, is where the victim archetype plays out in basically keeping us in a lack of sovereignty, a lack of power, and lack of strength, where we find ourselves in situations where we are victimized in a variety of ways. And it's particularly common, particularly in many light workers, and that are empaths and healers, spiritual business owners that are highly empathic, where their empathy and the lack of maybe boundaries, assertiveness, attracts, for example, situations where they find it very difficult to move out of certain victim traits. So let's look at some of the most common traits of the victim type, how it kind of shows up, and then we'll look at it in relation to money and business. So for this session, I'm just going to use Caroline Mizzi's victim archetype card, and just to kind of go, just to use this as a foundation. So in Caroline's card, she'll see the light attribute is prevents you letting yourself be victimized or victimizing others. So when we recognize the victim archetype, and we've learned from that, once we've been a victim to situations and victim to all sorts of things in our life, it makes us be aware where we might be attracting another situation where we may be the victim of something. So it helps us get worldly wise, basically, and a wee bit more switched on. And it helps us recognize where we are actually showing up, as a victim, where we're making ourselves vulnerable to situations. We're not showing up in our strength and our sovereignty, right? And the shadow element is when we play the victim, we're choosing to be the victim, right? And sometimes it's, it's unconscious, but we're choosing to be the victim for feedback, right? In the form of pity and an inability to maintain personal boundaries. And sometimes, people use that different for feedback, pity to receive other things, right? So it's it can be to receive emotional support, to receive a certain validation. It can be you're looking for something, but you can be looking for also to receive something, right? And I'm going to talk about this more. So I have to be honest, in relation to there's 4 survival archetypes, and I have to say the victim archetype is one that is shown up in my life a lot. And I'll share bits because I always think when you share your aspects of your personal story, stories help people look at their own lives and helps look at areas where there can be similar themes. So I was someone who was always very highly empathic and sensitive, and also very small as a child compared to other people. My siblings were never tall, but I was always the smallest, even though I was the oldest. And for a variety of reasons, people, in many ways, I think, from a young age, approached me and acted as if I was a victim because I was small. I also was just unfortunate that I had some rare medical challenges from a young age, things that weren't maybe were obvious physically. They didn't really have a huge impact in some areas to my life till later on. But several things, I attracted a lot of strange situations. So I had a rare medical condition. I ended up having to get all my teeth out when I started school. I was exposed to different things medically that I shouldn't have been. There's lots of things happened. But I also was always regarded, even in my report cards, extreme. Eileen is so sensitive. She's so, and I would get, she's shy, she's so sensitive. And it was this like, my sensitivity was a weakness. So there was that victim energy, right? So whatever's, we're reflecting, we send back. And also, obviously we all know, in childhood, we all form different behaviour patterns to survive. And sometimes we don't learn how to overcome certain challenges because of a variety of reasons. And one of the biggest challenges that I had was boundaries. I was eldest of 9, and I think on many levels, I didn't really understand what boundaries were. Being highly empathic, I was always aware of other people's needs, often to the detriment of myself, where I didn't know how to overcome certain of those challenges. Now, some of it was on what you would call an intuitive level that many other people, when you're an empath and really, really more intuitive and sensitive compared to other people, and you can see and feel things that other people, it can be quite hard in environments where maybe other people don't have that level of awareness or see the world the way that you do. And I didn't seem to know how to push through that. Like most teenagers, there were some things I was able to push through as a teenager, but there was other things that I struggled with. And due to even also a lot of the medical challenges that I faced, I attracted a lot of situations in my life journey when I was a victim of neglect, of harm, of even abuse, discrimination, and that was something attracted. And also in my business, it was very interesting. The very first month I started up in business, I attracted the most unbelievable circumstances in the first month. It was unbelievable what happened. And I got accused of being a con woman. Even it was a woman that was, I think, a little bit, let's say, probably had mental health issues, but there was a few things happened. And I also, a large company were going to try and sue me over something that was completely, I was not in the wrong at all. But this company were trying to bully me because of the name of my business, even though it wasn't a limited company. And I had some other things that were being promoted at that time. And what I didn't know was they had a range of products. And it's a long story, but basically this huge company were going to try and sue me. And I had just started up, and I had been someone that had been very, very ill for 7 years. So much so that I had spent large chunks of that at times what you would call bedbound and housebound. And I didn't get normal benefits. I was living off, which was more or less income support, the lowest, income that you could be on someone that was relying on social benefits and support. And no bank would give me a loan or support me because of I was a high risk to do with my circumstances. And I had lots of things that I had still a lot of health challenges. I had disabilities, mobility issues, lots of challenges that made it quite hard for me to start a business, but I just wanted my freedom. I was trying to move out of that victimhood. And even during my health challenges, I was someone who did everything I possibly could, and I was investing everything I could. And tried to do anything to try and help myself, but there was something there that was still attracting a lot of circumstances from the victim. And it took me many years to realise that at the core of that was a lot of wounding to do with self-worth, self-esteem, and not really fully understanding boundaries. And for example, I remember going for a long course on assertiveness, but it didn't solve my issue because it was not getting to the core issue of what was going on. And also a lot of the courses that I would go on for many, many years, one of the biggest differences also was they were approaching things from a psychological, a mental and emotional perspective, but they were all not, they didn't address the psychic perspective. And as an empath, as someone who was very empathic to other things, one of the things I didn't learn to many years later, and after a lot of investing a lot of money in so many courses and so many therapists and things, was that some things should be addressed in a more spiritual and psychic way, because there is other things going on. So one of the things that we can see when you get stuck in the victim mentality in any capacity is that what happens is often other people are, there's that vibration, even though there can be other areas in your life. So we're all a mixture of things. I can maybe be very empowered in certain areas of my life, and there's certain areas I'm not very strong, but there can be other areas where I'm not so. And one of the biggest areas I did have was also was money. I was always seen to have, invest so much of my income on just being able to function, to get out of bed, and and support and health. And I had lots of trauma, I had lots of injuries, I was really unlucky with lots of things that happened to me, and lots of people that kind of implied they could help, but then when they actually got me and they seen all the challenges, it was like it was so much for them to support. They didn't have the skills. But I also, in my business, I just wanted to help. But there was a lot of people who saw me as a soft touch, so would try and take advantage of me. I allowed them to take advantage. I allowed them to manipulate me. Some other things sometimes I didn't see coming, but I allowed myself in situations to feed other victims, and particularly those who were not wanting to do things to get out of certain circumstances. And one of the things that I found was I was attracting a lot of people who didn't really invest in their health or their well-being, and expected other people. I also, as I started helping business owners alongside my own business, I saw this as well. A lot of people just wanting things for free in relation to business advice, business help, marketing help, and remaining in victimhood and expecting someone else to solve their problem. And I had to realize that there was areas in my life that were some things, and of course, some aspects of my health. And there were some aspects of my health that I was doing almost everything that I possibly consciously could do, that I was aware of at certain points. But one of the areas that I really struggled was being assertive with people and not being a people pleaser. And I see this as a trend off in the caring and the industry, where particularly archetypes that are strong caregivers. A lot of strong caregiver archetypes are very open-hearted and they want to serve others, but they can also be strong victim wounding, because an archetype with a very open, generous heart often has been a victim, a strong victim in their life. And that's part of, sometimes, of course, your makeup and part of your purpose is to help others and to do that with a big heart. But there can also be the wondering, when you have been a victim, you understand what it feels like to be a victim and you don't want to be there, right? But if we don't heal that wound and we don't address, and part of it is addressing it, is being aware of it. If you're not bringing attention to it, an awareness to, and ignoring it and denying it, well, you're just suppressing it. And one of the things that you have to do is recognize that where the victim tendencies come in. And there is some things that I still know, there's still certain patterns, but there's also an ability also to recognize when you've been a victim, because there is that element. Now, of course, in society, they'll say you are only a victim if you're allowing yourself to be a victim, of course. And sometimes part of running a business, a sewing business, and a spiritual business, and even a therapy business, is being honest with people of where you're at and what's going on. So often I will describe things and explain things that's maybe has been going on with my health and other things. And that's an element because I'm trying to educate people. But in that process, it can appear and it can come across, as if you're choosing to be the victim. And obviously, there's lots of layers. We all have these layers. And we all have, it's just the same as we describe anything. But there's two polarities to that, because we all can be the victim of other people not taking responsibility and other people. So in a business, it's so important when we recognise that the clients are trying to manipulate us to get something and be a victim to gain something from us, particularly freebies, pay less, or to try and get you to generally lower your products but to suit them. And that can be another form of them trying to get them to feel sorry for you. Now, I'll give you some examples of typical scenarios that I've found myself in. I've then decided to really cut myself back, where maybe clients who have either invested, or sometimes I get people to beta test courses and all sorts of that. And I've had some situations where then it was clear that I was attracting someone very strong in the victim archetype, and maybe showing up, and maybe people I was helping out, and then continually to emphasize, no matter how much I gave them in front of other people, even though I gave them, maybe other people wouldn't know they got freebies, would constantly reiterate that they couldn't afford this and they couldn't afford that. And they would be pushing in front of almost like everyone else, their poor me, I can't, as if also they were maybe the only one in a certain circumstance. And we all have that. It's the child, wanting to say poor me because there's something lacking within them. And also at that point, they feel powerless, right? There is, well, I'm saying powerless. When you go to that level of manipulation, there is different levels of manipulation. So there can be the victim archetype, and there can be the archetypes that play out then to try and get their own way. So someone who moves from that victim archetype to try and persuade you is starting to really use really serious manipulation to try and, especially when they do it a certain way. And one of the biggest things is a lot of healers get stuck and light workers get stuck because they genuinely want to make a difference, and money is not the be all and end all, because that's not their main motivation. They're genuinely coming from the soul that they want to help. They can find those circumstances very conflicting, where I've had all sorts of situations where people wanted to start businesses with me, but the reality was I would be the one that would be doing all the work, and I had maybe all the qualifications, mostly experience. There might be something that they would bring to the table, but it would be very unequal. And I found it really strange, for many years. Why was I attracting that kind of, and also that people could, thought that was okay, when almost it was, in most cases, they didn't really want to put any money on the table. They were wanting me to do the work and do the things, and they would get maybe half. They were looking for half, the profit and half the income, but they were expecting me to do most of and take most of the risk in relation maybe to time, energy, and money, or benefiting from my years of experience and not valuing that. And again, that was shown up as, within me, the victim. There's a victim archetype in some way, a worthlessness, low self-esteem. There's other archetypes out at play as well, but when we understand that the victim archetype can keep us stuck, and if you find yourself being that victim, the person that is looking for ways to get what you want by being a victim, right? If you're choosing not to invest when you know an investment in your business will help you grow, but you're just choosing. Sometimes I get people who will tell me they can't afford, but it's not that they can't afford, they won't afford, or they won't do the other things, like maybe get another job or make certain sacrifices or sell certain things or do other things to get it, or they don't want it enough, right? Now, I certainly will never, push someone to go into debt or anything to do with their business and put themselves in certain risks that is not comfortable or is not going to be healthy for anyone. But I'm also aware, and one of the things that's been a big, huge lesson in my life is that I'm someone that's made a lot of investments, a lot of investments. So even though I do have, like a lot of people, the victim archetype at play, I have also made how could you say, made a lot of commitments, a lot of motivation, a lot of determination, tenacity. So there's other archetypes that balance out, in my life and has kept me with a drive and a motivation to create certain changes, right? And I'm so grateful for that. And we're all got those complex, but we have to be careful as light workers and healers and coaches and therapists that we look at our own shadow in the victim archetype, but are also aware when we are being manipulated by other people, particularly to do with money. Because the reality is that most of us spend many, many years and thousands and thousands of pounds, some of us, like myself, tens of thousands of pounds and hundreds of thousands of hours in our work or our study or whatever to be what we are. And then it can be very easy to fall into when you're creating codependent relationships and other people who are expecting you to give them certain things, and they want to plead victimhood, but they don't want to take any self-responsibility for where they're in the choices they make. I've had a lot of these circumstances where people could actually, they're not making any income in their business because they've never invested in the right things, but they refuse to go and take, a job or do anything to change their circumstances. And it's almost like even the thought of that is a horror. And I know personally I made lots of sacrifices and took other jobs when I had to, certain circumstances, particularly to take things in my career a bit, to invest in other things or to do something. I've done what was required to do. And like everything, archetypes have layers and they have different angles. And sometimes it's easy for other people to see those angles. And we can all find ourselves in circumstances where we're triggered, where we feel paralyzed, we feel stuck. And sometimes the victim archetype is very strong in relation to money, with people who feel frozen, have had experiences where there's been a lot of trauma over money. Now, I have to be honest, I've probably had trauma over money differently to different people. So a lot of people have maybe trauma in childhood, particularly if their parents were maybe had addictions, alcohol issues, and other problems that maybe caused extreme poverty, and also maybe other things that where people maybe lose everything overnight to do with lose their home and things to do with poverty, and maybe other things. Sometimes they can be linked to that loss, death of a loved one, death of a parent. All sorts of things can be linked to money, right? One of my biggest, I suppose, challenges was as a young adult and even through as a therapist is giving a lot of money away, people to say to me, I can really help that challenge that you have, and oh, this definitely treats that and it treats it really well, or I can, this. And it didn't. Spending many, have invested many. I've worked with therapists and for many, many years. And I'll give you one example, which there wasn't money, but it just gives you an example where you give up your power and you're looking sometimes for another solution, to maybe something that you're struggling to solve or struggling to get that more help with. And I remember going to a homeopathic doctor for 5 years now, and going to many therapists who just kept saying, no, you need to persevere, you need to persevere. But it was it wasn't till later on that I realised, as I became more qualified and more insightful in different therapies, and understood anatomy in the body and understood myself more, understood there was lots of things that their modality would never have fitted, but they didn't really know if it would help. They just maybe listened to the training school or assumed. And I've got winding. I have to be honest, I've got winding around that, and I'm constantly working on it. And I'm now, but those experiences have made me far more strong and firm in who I work with. And often I meet lots of healers and therapists, and I have lots of friends that are healers and therapists, and sometimes they're kind of wanting me to go to them for some of their modalities. And I've learned to have really strong, healthy boundaries now, because I often find that sometimes people assume a lot of things and they don't know the full picture. And so that's gave me that ability now, makes me realize when I can be a victim, because I'm still a bit of a people pleaser, and I don't like to offend people. I don't like to hurt their feelings. So when people are trying to, say to me, well, I do that, or I do something like this, or whatever, I could easily the little victim in me go, okay, I'll just go to them because I don't want to offend them. But that is the victim within me. And that, part of my healing process is being able to overcome that and to stand tall and say, no, I need to choose what's right for me. And that's part of my process. Now, for you, it's important for you to understand, where are you being a victim in your business? Where are you being a victim in your life? Where are you being a victim even in your training, your expertise? Are you stuck because you're not willing to take that next step forward? Are you stuck because you're so caught up? Because another thing that I can see where people become a victim is they have such limited beliefs on their tools and techniques, or they're holding on to their tools and techniques so much that they are a victim almost of their own. They're not they're frightened to move out their growth. Now, there can be other archetypes that really are playing out there. But what I'm trying to see is they're so stuck in the victimhood of, my business isn't working, or or I'm not moving forward and I can't live my dreams, because, but it's because of certain choices they're making, or it's because of their mindset. And sometimes people say, well, these are the tools that I use and I'm not interested in using anything else. But what they're not moving with the times, they're not actually seeing things from a wider perspective. They're still using maybe modalities and tools that they've been using 30 years ago, and they still have the same views, or they're not they're choosing to be a victim because they're still in a child mindset. It's almost like a child that goes to school and still wants to stick to certain the ways that they do maths and arithmetic, and stick to those things, but they've not grown. So that can be, there's different ways to look at this. But the key here is, when we understand we're a victim in our own life, where are we a victim to our circumstances? Another one is that I get people who will say, well, look, my circumstances at the moment, it's not feasible, but they still expect someone else to help them move the dream, right? Where it's almost like they think someone else should do it, so someone else should pay for it, someone else should do the investment. And we have to look at that. And sometimes there's other dynamics going on here. There's other things that you're not being truthful about, or something else that you're not willing to address, maybe with a partner, something you're not willing to address. Is it that you're someone that puts everything financial security. So I meet sometimes clients who have got a lot of financial security and they have a lot of things, but they still feel they don't have enough to invest in something, and it's a psychological thing. I have other people who it's just what they choose to invest in and what they want. They'll not invest in their business, but they may invest in their home, their mortgage, new bag, new clothes, that day out, that the game they went to, the what do you call it, the show they went to, their perfume, their makeup, getting their nails done. Everything is about choice. And it's always important for us to look at, are we choosing certain things, or are we choosing not to do certain things? Now, are we choosing not to do the things we really should be doing in our business? Is that what's keeping us in victimhood in relation to money? And when you look at the money, the energy of money, there's lots of layers to money, and money where we can fear money, where we are a victim of we may have been ripped off a lot with money. So we have a lot of wounding, or we're scared to invest in a business because we've already spent maybe thousands of pounds. I used to, unfortunately, one of the reasons that I really started helping people with their business was in their marketing was that very reason. I got a spate of people, particularly, it was a lot of hypnotherapists who had a really not so nice experience with some things that happened with, someone that they trained with, and also to do with websites. A lot of them were ended up getting websites that were not fit for purpose. It was part of packages that were a lot of money, and they were all left with these websites that weren't fit for purpose, extremely poor, and a lot of them had invested in extra bonus things that was supposed to help them grow their business, but would never have helped them grow their business, because there was, again, lots of key things missing. And a lot of them felt very angry, upset. A lot of them had spent all their savings, it was like the retirement money, on these things to build a business, and then something wasn't fit for purpose, and it really left people angry and annoyed that, and they felt, I suppose, there was also some aspects of naivety, because they didn't ask enough questions, they didn't look into it, so they were being a victim because they didn't take self-responsibility in that situation. And sometimes in business, it's because we don't do enough homework. And even if we invest in business and marketing coaches or people who don't really know what they're doing, or we're actually being naive, we're just assuming that one thing's going to sort all the problems out, because that's another thing that happens in business. Some people go into business and have a very naive perception of business. They look at business and they don't really understand how business really works, and what the average business has to do for it to make it work. And one even thing is, often a lot of people automatically think what someone charges is quite near what they take home, when often that's so far from the truth. And it's because they have not educated themselves enough in that area. So they become a victim to lack of awareness, lack of knowledge, lack of expertise, and they find themselves a victim, and that can, create some challenges. But again, when we have that victim archetype within us in some capacity, we attract more of, other victim archetypes that are going to they want maybe things, or they're going to use the poor me to try and get you to feel sorry for them. Now, I saw something, that would be a few days ago, in a group, and I found it really, I was quite shocked, to be honest, because this level of victimhood was so bad that it was real manipulation. And it was in a group where a lovely man, a healer, who really did have a lot to give. He had a lot to give. And then maybe if I hadn't invested in it as much as I have invested in the last few years, and who I've worked with, I would have considered working with this man. It was expensive, but what he was giving was very, very valuable, extremely valuable. It was not your basic foundational healing modalities. You know, it's more advanced stuff. And some of it was very like some of the things that I've invested a lot of money in. So it's, you know, very advanced approaches to things and advanced ways of looking at things that can cut through a lot of things that, for example, that a lot of healers struggle with. But he kindly gave 3 days away with a lot of valuable stuff, and it was in many ways some healing in it. And when then the post was put out and things were to promote about what was actually done, there was a lot of people who put posts up in that group that were so demeaning towards this man, as if this man should be giving it away for free and giving it as a free energy exchange. And some of the comments were insane. I mean, there was one comment, and when was saying, well, I do Reiki, so I could give a equal exchange. Now, not being disrespectful, I studied Reiki. That was one of the first modalities. This man was doing something very advanced, right? And had kindly gave so much valuable information, like it's called very advanced information away, right? And there was a lot of manipulation where people were saying, well, I could give an energy exchange, and I'm a valuable person and I should be able to, without having to give money. And if this person's a light worker and they really want to help light workers, it was almost like they shouldn't be really charging. Now, I would agree, I found some of it, maybe because I do still, the money is something I'm still working on, how could you say, my self-worth in relation to money. But I would never, I mean, I do believe that, you know, a lot of healers and light workers don't recognize sometimes how much someone else has sacrificed and invested to get to where they are. And I was really tempted to put in that post, well, how much have you spent on this, and this, and how much would you invest, for example, in getting treatment? Because this was a lot of Americans who, you know, who would probably have to pay a lot of money for you know, medically, privately. And, you know, and in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that a lot of money, you know, considering what he was given. But, you know, but what was put out in the level of victimhood, as if, well, and with all this kind of, and I can't recover now, and I can't go over this because you're not going to give me it for free, as if this reliance on this person, it was real strong. I mean, it was such a level of victimhood where it was a sense of entitlement and expectation. And then I saw another post which someone had stated, well, if you see it, you know, we're all light workers, and it's like, you know, I could be your sister or brother, so you should be able to give it to me for free. And I thought, that's absolutely insane. Do they expect a doctor to give them everything for free? Do they expect to get their home for free? Do they expect to get their car for free? And this man had studied really high in depth this kind of stuff for 11 years. Now, I tend to go to people that have at least 20, 30 years full-time experience. That's what I tend to invest. You know, but 11 years, if you've really invested in that, and also you've not, you know, you've went for the really advanced stuff and you're looking at that. And I can imagine this person has spent a lot more than what he's charging for what he learned, right? A lot more. And I think this is where sometimes, you know, I know we're in a situation at the moment, the awakening ascension, but there is a lot of manipulation going on here where people are not taking self-responsibility for their own life choices and their own life decisions. We all make different life choices and life decisions. And some of this, of course, everyone can have certain things that make things a bit challenging. I know that. I can, you know, certain things can, and we do our best with what we can, and we get stuck and we need help. But we have to also take self-responsibility for a lot of our actions and inactions. And part of that is moving out of the victim archetype, is being honest with ourselves and saying, right, okay, for example, I sometimes get people kind of say things to me just because of their level of experience I've had, and they're almost like grudge because they've not got that much experience yet. But I will explain to them, do they really want my life? My life, I got this level of experience and the dedication just because of my own circumstances, because I didn't have children, I didn't have a partner, I didn't have a lot of other things that most normal people had because of my lifestyle relation to doing my health and my choices. My choices are what I dedicated and I've invested in. And I chose to not invest in as much material things when other people did. So it's all about choice. So we have to look at our own life and move out of that victim archetype, especially what is going on in the collective at the moment. Part of moving into empowerment and sovereignty is moving away from the victim archetype. So it's about tapping into the sovereign archetypes. And you can't deny, you have to look at your victim archetype. And when we look at the victim archetype and are aware of a victim archetype, it helps us. Of course, then you can bring in more of the sovereign archetypes and things that are strength that's going to help you, but don't avoid facing the victim, facing those aspects within you that you're trying to cover up, you're trying to deny, right? Because it's like having this, it's like when you try and do affirmations, but the unconscious, there's lots of wounding and trauma and other things underneath that have not been healed. And you may be trying to send out a certain signal, but there's other signals that is causing conflicting message going on. And until you resolve those conflicting messages, you're going to attract back, all sorts of things. So, it's so important that we look at the victim archetype in a life or spiritual journey and a business in relation to money and how that can show, because money is just in many ways energy. And if we are choosing to be a victim, it can show up in many ways in our business in relation to money and to the type of clients that we attract. And even things that can go wrong in their business to do with money, to situations, because you're attracting this energy of like, come and manipulate me, come take advantage of me, come and, let me be a more victim. You'd attract drama as well. You attract drama. And, there's other reasons, there is other things that can go on to do with that. There is things that can also, we can attract psychically. So, and that can add to the mix, but it's important to become aware of the victim and to heal those wounds, to move into sovereignty and to improve your self-worth and self-esteem, so you can value yourself more in your business and have healthier boundaries. Bye-bye for now.